This is Attack of the 20th Century. Thank you for joining us as we explore science fiction, fantasy, and horror films of the 20th century. I'm your host, Jeff.
And I'm your other host, Kim.
Welcome to episode 50. We continue our spooky season series with our family-friendly episode. We are reviewing the 1995 film Casper, as well as the 1949 doubleheader, The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. Look for us on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube at Attack of the 20th Century. That's 20th. We post our next movie selection there. You can comment, give your thoughts, and they just might make it on the air. As always, you're welcome to email us at attackofthe20thcentury@outlook.com. We always start off with what you've been watching lately. And I had slated to talk about Three's Company. And we've talked about, at this point, we're kind of an ad for Pluto TV.
Yeah, we are.
Because there's all this old content out there that just plays 24/7. And they have a Three's Company station. You and I are fans of Three's Company. We actually bought the first 3 seasons on DVD back in the day.
Yeah, we've had that for a while.
Yeah. But as of late, I found myself turning to it on Pluto TV from time to time. And one of our sons is actually enjoying it too. And
right.
And this is just strange timing, but today I opened my Instagram feed and I see that Suzanne Summers passed away today.
Yeah, we lost Suzanne.
Yeah. So
Chrissy.
She passed away of cancer. Today's October 15th, 2023 when we're recording this. But if you're unfamiliar with the show, it's kind of a predecessor to Friends. That's what you and I talked about.
Oh, yeah, really. Yeah, definitely. That kind of slapstick, situational...
Comedy,
sitcom. It's kind of really
yeah
started going down that route of like Friends and your life and
yeah.
Like
you said, situational comedy. It's always built off some sort of misunderstanding,
right?
Yes. Misinformation.
Well, John Ritter's character, Jack.
Yeah, Jack.
His whole reason for being able to be in an apartment with 2 women in the 70s, right? So when the show started. Is hilarious anyhow. Like it's built on a lie. Yeah. Which is totally out of context for 2023. No one would bat an eye about, I don't live in that world, but I don't think most people don't bat an eye at
2 girls and a guy. Yeah. Co-ed situations.
Sharing apartment sort of situation. But obviously it wasn't the norm in the 70s. And so he creates this reason for it being okay for him. And it's a lie. Yeah. And so antics ensue.
Yeah, exactly. So anyway, it's definitely a fun show. Like we said, it's kind of a predecessor to Friends and some of the other comedies out there.
Big Bang Theory wouldn't exist without Three's Company.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, it set the stage for so many other sitcoms to come, really.
We talked about Chrissy. She kind of plays this silly, naive, dumb blonde character.
Yeah.
But obviously she was kind of the sex symbol of the 3.
Oh, for sure.
But she has a childlike innocence about her in the show. She's very unaware.
Naive was a good term. You use that, yeah.
Naive. And then you have Jack, played by John Ritter. And he's very much a physical comedian.
Oh, yeah.
He's hilarious. It's really him at his best.
And he throws 90 miles an hour at everything in the show. Like he's putting everything he's got into it. Right.
And then Joyce DeWitt plays the other female. She is kind of probably the smarter of all 3 of them. Yeah. She's the one that is kind of the mom.
She's
of
the
the
Velma. If this were Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, there you go.
She's a cuter Velma.
Yeah, she is.
No shade to Velma, but...
Yeah, she's definitely a cuter one.
Janet's a very striking brunette.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so it's a sad day for the Three's Company fans that are still out and about. We lost John Ritter some years ago to a heart something. Our condolences to the Suzanne Summers family and the fans out there that still know who she is. Yep.
All right. So what are we reviewing today?
Okay, we have a double header, but it's almost like a triple header because one of our movies is 2 in 1, and that's what we're covering first.
That's right.
Yes. So first we have The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and I almost forgot, if you don't like spoilers, this did come out in 1949, so I highly doubt we're spoiling anything for you. But just in case you really hate spoilers, pause this now, go watch The Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad on Disney Plus, and then come back and join us later. But yes, so from 1949, it is a rated G, family-friendly Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and it has an 88% tomato meter score, critic score on Rotten Tomato, and a 71% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes. Oh. It's pretty high up there. I'm not sure why the audience has beef with it more so than the critics do.
Yeah, that is odd.
Yeah, but there you have it.
So here's a little synopsis of The Wind in the Willows. It's based on a 1908 children's novel written by Kenneth Grahame. The story is narrated by Basil Rathbone, and our central character, Mr. Toad, is a free spirit who spends crazy amounts of money chasing life's thrills with his horse pal, Cyril. Mr. Toad's best friends, McBadger, Ratty, and Moley, and you can guess what animals they are, attempt an intervention to no avail.
Yeah.
Mr. Toad finds a new obsession, motor cars. He makes a bad deal with a gang of weasels, gets falsely accused of stealing a car, ends up in jail, escapes, and with his friend's help, proves his innocence. In the end, Mr. Toad professes he's changed his ways and will not be so reckless in the future, but quickly throws himself into his newest passion, airplanes.
Yes.
So what is your history with this film?
Okay, so this film I think was on regular rotation when I was a kid. There was a period of time when I was growing up that we did have cable, which meant we did have the Disney Channel.
Yep.
So I think it was a regular play on there. And I even remember seeing this in elementary school. I'm pretty sure, I don't know if it was like field day and we'd earned like a movie in the afternoon. Maybe we watched it then, or maybe it was played at during the fall. I don't know, but I've seen it a lot.
Yeah.
And it's very, resonates with my childhood.
Yeah. Yeah. You see, we didn't have the Disney Channel growing up, and I was always jealous. Like every now and then you'd get like a week free.
Right. Yeah.
And those were like gold, I got to enjoy the Disney Channel. I remember there being like a Halloween special, and there was all this Disney content in the Halloween special, and it had segments. And I remember the whole Headless Horseman portion in particular was featured. But I don't think I saw this movie really until I was kind of maybe 13, 14, a little later in my childhood.
I think Disney later, maybe like a decade or so later, separated out the Ichabod Crane portion and played it as a separate holiday, Halloween season special from Mr. Toad and his adventures.
Yeah. Now, The Wind in the Willows, let's just back up for a second. The Wind in the Willows specifically, what's your history with that?
So my mother was an elementary school teacher and loves books and fostered that love of books with my sister and I. And so I grew up reading The Wind in the Willows and even read some Wind in the Willows to our kids when they were much smaller. Love Mr. Toad. Fun fact, didn't go to Disney 100 million times as a kid like people do now.
Yeah.
But I did make it there a handful of times growing up.
Yeah.
Back when it was a lot cheaper.
Yeah.
And Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was one of my favorite rides. I was not a roller coaster rider until I was in my teens. That kind of terrified me. So Mr. Toad's Wild Ride was just about as wild as I could handle things.
Yeah.
I think it's probably been replaced again because we haven't been to the Magic Kingdom in forever. But I know at one point they took it out and I think it got replaced with the Winnie the Pooh ride.
Maybe.
Which is in like Fantasyland or, something like that. So it's just a car on a track and the scenery from the books or the movies are kind of coming at you and whatnot. So I love Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. That was fun.
Yeah, same here. I loved that ride. It was my absolute favorite as a kid. And I think there was just something naughty about it because you get hit by a train, if you remember, and you go to hell.
I forgot. Yeah, the ending of it was a little bit spooky.
Yeah, it was a little spooky. But just being like your car's being jerked all over the place, and it's lunacy, right?
Yeah.
And it was perfect for a little kid.
Yeah. Now, if you were a Space Mountain rider, this was probably,
a little too kiddie for you.
Yeah, this was lame. But for those of us who were a little chicken for the real roller coasters, this was great and a little bit edgy.
Yeah, a little edgy. But yeah, I would say I didn't read these stories, though, until later. I know we read them to our kids and stuff.
Well, and I will say, these aren't even American stories. So it's interesting to me now to think about, like, how did Disney end up... Of course, I guess Peter Pan isn't either, and Disney has taken that and made it its own thing. I mean, most of the fairy tales were not American in originality. So I guess that shouldn't be too shocking. But this is a very British thing, right? Mm-hmm. Mr. Graham, that was the author of these, actually started making up the stories and telling them to he had one son, Alistair, and he was a sickly child. I think he was blind in one eye. And he just, like, it became part of their ritual. Like, he would start telling him these stories, and then when he would travel away from the family, he started writing them down, and I think eventually left his bank job to write these stories down, and, you know, became an author. I don't think they had a lot of success when they were first written.
Okay, yeah.
But then they became, I mean, they're kind of like part of the childhood great classics now, I would think.
Yeah. I'll get us started with some standouts for the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad. We're talking about the Wind in the Willows portion specifically.
Right, which is Mr. Toad.
Mr. Toad. So I would say these characters you instantly like.
For sure.
There's something, I don't know, they're dynamic in nature, they're compelling, there's something about them you're just drawn in pretty darn fast.
They're charming. They're woodland creatures in waistcoats. Like, how more British can you get? Like, I just love them.
And we'll get to favorite scene here in a second, but, you know, I thought there was some real drama going on, you know, especially near the end where they're high stakes. They're trying to get the paperwork from Mr. Winky, and you got weasels throwing knives and cleaves.
Yeah.
What are those called? Cleavers.
Meat cleavers.
Meat cleavers. And I don't know. There's a real sense of like, oh my gosh, high stakes, some anxiety.
It's intense.
Intensity.
Yeah, it's kind of intense.
It's such a short story.
Yes, it's not a full-length feature film.
They achieve a lot in a short amount of time.
I think so. So I'm just going to piggyback on that and say, like, you can't help but love these characters. There's something, even though they do, I guess, have accents and whatnot, but there's just like this British homey, cozy quality of their little houses. And I mean, it almost makes me think of like hobbit holes and, you know, like these little animals living in their community. And I don't know.
Except for Toad Manor, maybe.
Well, Toad Manor's pretty fancy. Yeah, that's true. He's pretty bougie. So I think if you read the book, you get an even deeper feeling for just the instant likability of these characters. But this being, like we said, not a full-length film, it's just a shortened little snippet. I think Disney did a really good job of pulling that from the book into their animated short. Like, you really do, you have the ability to like these characters and to see their different personalities, because they very much have different personalities. It's very, very clear in the book because you spend more time with them. Yeah. And their personalities kind of match they really, truly match their animal-like qualities. Like, that's where I will say there's a bit of a departure with Badger. He doesn't have a Scottish quality to him in the book, but he does in the Disney variation, and he would be more cagey and more like a badger. Kind of, you don't see them a lot, right? So he kind of is a little more in the shadows in the book, not in a bad way, but that's just part of his personality. But again, it's not a full length feature film, right? So they did a really good job of drawing that out in that minimal amount of time. All right. Yeah. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, what about setbacks? I know I have a setback I want to talk about, but I'm going to save it for after the Ichabod portion. Okay. The only setback, again, because I love these books so much and I love British literature in general, is that the story takes a few Disney twists that, you know, just don't stick true to the book. And that's fine. They made it work. Like Mr. Winky, he's not... Like, he's a Disney creation. And I feel like he is the one character that feels out of character for the story. I don't love Mr. Winky. I get it. He drives the plot along. Right. Because the plot, all the same things happen in the book as far as Toad's, you know, just total just
his mania,
his
motor mania.
Yeah, that's a great word. His mania for first it was he was going to have they call it a gypsy caravan or whatever. But then he went on to motor cars, and then it was on to the airplanes. All of that is true to the book. The whole Mr. Winky part and the weasels. Now there are weasels in the book that we have to get out of Toad Hall at some point. But they had to use that to shorten it. I think they had to bring in Mr. Winky to abbreviate that story into this small amount of time. So I didn't love it, but it worked. Yeah.
This whole thing, the whole movie is 1 hour and 9 minutes total. And I think this is maybe a little less than half of that hour and 9 minutes.
Yeah, I think Ichabod gets a little more of that, right?
Yeah, I think so. As far as favorite scenes, so I have a couple here that are contenders. But I will, you know what? I'm going to go ahead and settle for the one that I think is my favorite. And that's where Mr. Toad, he sees the car for the first time. And his eyes go bonkers.
You stole my scene!
And he does a frog hop, but not with his legs, just on his butt.
Yeah, but it's almost like he's levitating at some point, right?
Yeah, he is just enraptured with his motor car, and they have a great way of showing how infectious this mania is for him. And he's caught it, and now he's riding all the way home, but not in a car, but on his butt.
Think of like a child on a stick horse, pretending he's riding a horse. But this is just Toad on his imaginary car because he wants a car so badly. In the book, actually, there's a free version of it on Audible that you can listen to that has a great, I can't think of the narrator off the top of my head, but he even does all the voices. And Frog, when he's like imagining himself driving the motor car, he does this little boop boop noise like the horn of the car. It's adorable. But yeah, that's a pretty hilarious scene.
Oh, so I stole your favorite scene?
You kind of did steal my favorite scene. Yeah, I think we even made the joke in this most recent watching of it that there you have it. If a frog hops, does he bump his butt or whatever? Whatever that question is, like, does a frog bump his butt every time or I guess does a toad bump his butt every time he hops? Right.
Well, I will say a close second for me is the courtroom scene. Mr. Toad is so self-assured. He's so cocky. Yeah. And Mr. Winky walks in and he does a wink to Mr. Winky. So you feel like, there's a deal going on here or something. And then the second that Mr. Winky backstabs him and tells a lie, like the whole courtroom just erupts. Cops go and just grab Mr. Toad. They throw him into prison immediately. It's like just like craziness.
It's like they were waiting to snatch him up. Yeah.
Yeah, and there's like 100 people there. I'm thinking this is a car theft, Yeah, the whole town showed up for the car theft trial. But yeah, that's a close second for me.
Well, I'll say it's not necessarily a scene, but the just underlying theme of this story I love. And again, another plug for the book. If you read the book, it's even richer in the book. But just the amount of shenanigans these friends are willing to put up with from Mr. Toad. Yeah. Badger and Water Rat and Mole, like they're friends. They're true blue. And they see the road signs ahead, no pun intended. Like they're like, Frog or Toad is going to really mess himself up. He's spending all of his family inheritance on these crazy manias, and they're trying to help him. Yeah, Did they go about it in the best ways every time? Maybe not, but they really are trying to help him, and they have his best interest at heart. So I do love that. It's very heartwarming, this story.
Very much so. All right, so it is spooky season, so why don't we move on to our spookier segment of the Adventures of Ichabod and Mr. Toad, and that's the Legend of Sleepy Hollow. So let me first tell you a little bit about it, right? Bing Crosby's baritone voice tells us the story of Ichabod Crane coming to the town of Sleepy Hollow as the new schoolmaster. The young women of the town take interest in Ichabod, including the rich and beautiful Katrina. This infuriates the handsome beast of a man, Brom Bones. Bones tries his best to upstage Ichabod continually, but finds himself outmatched. There's a big formal dance party at Katrina's house on Halloween night, and Bones sings a tale of the Headless Horseman, which spooks Ichabod. Ichabod rides home in the creepy woods on his tired horse. The real Headless Horseman shows up and attempts to chop off Ichabod's head in an intense chase sequence. Ichabod crosses the bridge, which the horseman will not go over. However, he does throw his flaming pumpkin head at Ichabod, and Ichabod is never seen again. But at the end of the story, we see Ichabod maybe has started a new life with kids and wife, and Brom Bones has married Katrina, and the Headless Horseman is alive and well in the woods of Sleepy Hollow. So what is your history with The Legend of Sleepy Hollow? Have you actually read this story?
I have read the story. I read it a long time ago, but I went back and I listened to it on Audible again just to refresh. It's a short story, and it's actually one of our earliest known American fiction stories from that era, because it's set in the 1790s, but it was written about 1820. So, I mean, imagine, it's a very young America in 1820.
Yeah.
So Washington Irving actually wrote this as part of a whole series of short stories that he compiled into one book.
Now, was he American or was he British?
He's American, but he happened to be doing a tour of Europe while he was writing these stories. Okay. So there's some speculation that a lot of his inspiration came out of some older tales. There's a lot of Norse tales and Celtic and Welsh tales that involve these headless specters, and often they're on horseback and things like that. But the story here is, so I'm imagining, this is my own historical fiction here, I'm imagining Washington Irving is doing his tour of Europe, and he's hearing these old tales, and he's working on a book, and he's like, oh, well, we can plug a headless specter into my story here, but we'll make it about the Revolutionary War.
Yes.
So he sets it in 1790, which would have been just after, the Revolutionary War, in some, I'm doing air quotes that no one can see here, Sleepy Hollow up in upstate New York.
Yes.
The Dutch colony there. And his version of a headless specter is actually a Hessian soldier, that's hard to say, Hessian soldier, who lost his head to cannonball fire during the Revolutionary War.
Oh.
And so every night he's hunting the hollow for his missing head.
Oh.
And if you run across him, he may spirit you away, or you may die of fright. It's a very superstitious, steeped kind of area is where he set this story.
Yes.
So.
And you can't haggle with a headless man, right?
No, you cannot haggle with a headless man.
Is that the lyric? I can't remember what the lyric is from the Bing Crosby song.
I don't know. Yeah, Bing Crosby does have a fun little ditty that basically runs through as the narration of this portion of the film. So, yeah.
It's funny because this story I've confused a few times with the 1980 TV special, The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. It has Jeff Goldblum playing Ichabod Crane and Dick Butkus playing Brom Bones.
Yeah, see, I don't think I've ever seen that one.
Oh, you haven't? It's on YouTube. I've looked it up fairly recently because I couldn't remember. There's a different ending to that one than this one. And I won't go into the exact ending, but I will tell you the TV special, Brom Bones is out there screwing with Ichabod, pretending to be the Headless Horseman. Okay,
so that's really where the original story it never comes out and says Brom Bones did it.
Yeah.
But the words almost verbatim in the end of the story are, every time the legend of Ichabod Crane is mentioned, Brom Bones always has a knowing laugh.
Oh, okay.
So, and it's not, the old ladies like to continue to tell the story that he was spirited away to keep up the superstition.
Yeah.
But then there's like rumors that no, he actually just moved out of state and married someone else and is still because he's the school teacher, right, in the neighborhood. He's from Connecticut, and he's come here on an itinerant job to be the local school teacher. Mm-hmm. And so there's rumors that someone saw him in another county teaching school, and he's moved on with his life. Mm-hmm. Because basically they're rivals, right? That's where the story is Brom Bones and Ichabod both want Katrina Van Tassel. Yeah. And Brom Bones is like, I know how to fix this guy. Because truly, Ichabod Crane, from the story, they kind of show you this in the animation, but not really. He's obsessed with superstition and the local tales and kind of spooks himself. He carries around the Cotton Mather Witchcraft Tales book. I can't remember the exact title of that. Mm-hmm. And reads it to himself all the time. But then he catches himself reading into the dusk hours outside and then gets freaked out on his walk home every night. So he's really like a little too involved in the local superstitions. Right. And it's definitely alluded to in the story that Brom Bones uses that information to his advantage to get rid of his rival.
Now, in the story, is Ichabod such an opportunist? Because in the cartoon, they definitely paint him as a guy that, like, he wants the free meals.
Yes.
He really likes Katrina because she's beautiful, but more so because her daddy's rich.
Yes. Okay, so if you're cool with me jumping into one of my standouts,
go for it.
I think Disney nailed this when you're talking about, and of course they're working with a short story here and turning it into an animated short, but they really nailed the character of Ichabod Crane based on how Irving had written him in. Like, yes, Katrina von Tassel is the loveliest lady in the area, and she's the only child of a very wealthy Dutch farmer.
Right.
But Ichabod is mostly interested. Like, he loves good food. He loves the finer things in life. He looks at their house and their very productive farm. And it says, like, when he's visiting their farm, basically he sees every piglet running around on the farm with an apple in its mouth and a pudding in its belly. Like, he's a glutton. I mean, like, he's at his heart of hearts, he's like a greedy glutton. And he wants Katrina for all the things that she's going to bring into his life.
Yes.
He's got grand plans for Daddy's money.
Yeah.
And all of Daddy's good eating and everything that he can offer him. So, no, Disney nailed that. I mean, they paint that picture well, I think.
Oh, that's funny. That's funny.
Yeah.
Well, I'll go ahead and roll into some standouts of my own. I really think the songs in both cartoons really are fantastic. Yeah. But this one in particular, you get Bing Crosby, who is a favorite, right?
He can do no wrong in my eyes.
Especially around Christmas. But he has a song about Ichabod. Of course, his song about the Headless Horseman is great. I mean, it's just great music all around. And it's such a short film. And to nail, like, you only get 2 or 3 songs.
Right.
And they got to be pretty good, right?
Right.
And
they're memorable.
They're all good and memorable. Another one I'll say, it has genuine creep factor.
Oh, yeah.
The last several minutes in that dark woods of Sleepy Hollow, it really is creepy.
Yeah.
And you kind of feel for Ichabod. Like, I would be frightened.
Yes. It really, I think, especially thinking back to watching this as a kid, like, it feels like a nightmare.
Yeah.
And you're just panting, sweating, trying to get away from something that you don't know what it is. Or that free falling feeling you have in the dream where you're just like, you can't do anything about what's going on.
Yeah.
I think they did a really good job of capturing that right at the end of this movie.
Yeah, absolutely. And, we talk about gateway horror, like if you're a kid that wants to get into horror, how do people get scared at first? And then later on, they like scary movies. Right. It comes from these kind of moments, I think.
That's true. So does that mean Mr. Toad's Wild Ride is a gateway roller coaster?
It could be.
I did end up riding roller coasters later. You, not so much.
I could do Space Mountain and Big Thunder Mountain.
Oh, yeah. Okay. All right, so another standout for me is the animation here. I mean, it's Disney, and this is really, at this point in history, Disney is... like, they are the only person killing the animation game, right? I think. I don't really know a lot about 1949 animation, but they definitely have the corner on the market, right?
Oh, yeah.
But, I think they played this so well with the original story. And maybe Washington Irving's writings would have been probably more well-read in the school books or, with the youngsters and when this was made, so they had to keep it closer to the original story. I don't know. But I will say I have a little snippet here from the actual book. Oh. And if you have seen this animated short and you know what Ichabod Crane looks like, and then you hear this read from Washington Irving's story, you're like, oh man, they totally nailed this guy. So this is what it says. This is Ichabod. I'm going to give you a little backstory here. Ichabod, he borrows, I think his name was Gunpowder, the horse, to be able to go to Katrina Van Tassel's. It was like Hoedown or something they were all going to, right?
Yeah.
And so this is the horse he's got to ride back through the forest at the end of the night. But we see Ichabod on this horseback on the way to the party when he's feeling all like good about himself and he's about to go woo this girl, right? So it says, Ichabod was a suitable figure for such a steed. He rode with short stirrups, which brought his knees nearly up to the pommel of the saddle. His sharp elbows stuck out like grasshoppers. He carried his whip perpendicularly in his hand like a scepter, and his horse jogged on. The motion of his arms was not unlike the flapping of a pair of wings. A small wool hat rested on the top of his nose, for so his scanty strip of forehead might might be called, and the skirts of his black coat fluttered out almost to the horse's tail. Such was the appearance of Ichabod and his steed as they shambled out of the gate of Hans Van Ripper, and it was altogether such an apparition as is seldom to be met with in broad daylight. So if you can just picture, Ichabod on that horse, his elbows are out, his knees are up, he's kind of hunched up in the saddle, his hat's all wonky, like he just looks like a big goofball, right? So that's straight from Washington Irving's writing, and Disney nailed that with their drawing of Ichabod Crane.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely.
I thought they did a great job.
It's funny, too, that he's like the talk of the town amongst all the young ladies. Mm-hmm. I guess it's kind of like the new kid at school.
Well, that is kind of explained in the story also, is that everybody else is a farm worker, like this is a little farming village. And so he comes into town, and even though he's a little gangly and silly and goofy looking, he's the learned man, right? Here I am using air quotes again that no one can see. But he's traveled a little because he's probably done some other itinerant teaching jobs around the countryside. He reads, he knows books and literature. He also has a side gig as like the singing coach in town. Okay. So he gets to travel to all the ladies' farmhouses and sample everybody's good cooking and teach them how to sing psalms and hymns and how to hold a tune.
And they do show that in the cartoon.
Yes, exactly. He's like the little choir master guy also. Yeah. So they kind of look at him as like, he's different than us, but it's because he's educated.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, as far as setbacks, I don't really have any other than maybe the legacy of this film suffers because it's only 2 stories. An hour and 9 minutes. One's kind of spooky. One's very silly. They're very unrelated.
Right.
One's mostly a comedy. The other is more of a musical most of the time. And then at the end, it becomes really scary and creepy.
Yeah.
So I think just, what keeps it from being like legendary or just something that, that all of us want to watch every Halloween.
Right.
It's because it is a little odd. I'd rather have 3 creepy tales together or something.
Exactly. I think it's just a mismatch is what we have here. Like one's a very charming, homey story that gets a little zany and crazy because Mr. Toad is a little unhinged. But it's not a spooky story. And then we have The Legend of Ichabod Crane, which I think you're right. I think it would be a staple Halloween watch if it had been paired with 1 or 2 other creepy tales. Yeah. Even if they'd done 1 or 2 other creepy tales that come from like these colonial ghost stories and they don't even have to all be from the early 1800s to late 1700s. They could be from different, And I think Disney has some things, and I'm not the Disney expert here, so don't come after me, but they do have other, we used to see the tall tales. So they had like stories from Americana type tales where it was like, Babe the Blue Ox, Paul Bunyan, Calamity Jane. Do you remember those? I saw those as a
vaguely,
kid.
Yeah.
So those were all kind of together from the same genre, where these are 2 very different stories. Yeah. And if they'd put Ichabod with some comparable stories, then we'd pull that out at Halloween time and say, oh, here's the old classic Disney Halloween stuff, you know? And then, I'd hate for people not to see Wind in the Willows and Mr. Toad's stuff because it's no longer paired with Ichabod. So you'd have to expand. I mean, they could have done, this is Disney. They hadn't really got into their whole world building, series making stuff yet, I guess, in 1949. But they could have, there were certainly more Mr. Toad stories that they could have done. Right. And made that its own thing. Right. So, I don't know. And maybe they have, and I just haven't seen them. I don't know. Yeah. But why they put these 2 together is the question mark I have. Yeah. And I think we want more of it all, Yeah. And it's just these 2 odd stories put together, and they're both great. Right. But it's just an odd pairing. And then, like I said, the total watch time's an hour and 9 minutes, which isn't very long. No. We just want more. Right. Right. But I think if you're coming in it to watch, like, I want to watch this charming story of little British animals in their clothes and living in their woodland habitat, that's a very different mood than I want to watch, a slightly creepy but fun Halloween tale, ghost story, like a ghost story, right? Yeah. That's a different, like, you have to be ready to, okay, you can hit the pause button, you don't have to, or you can fast forward, whatever. You don't have to watch both of them at the same time, but. Yeah.
But what about you? Any setbacks you would call out, or?
No, I think I'm with you. It's just an odd pairing. Like, I love both stories. I love the animation. I'm not even too mad about the liberties they took with the original, writings, because you have to do that. Yeah. But no, I just think I have questions. I have questions. Why did we put these two movies together in one special?
Yeah.
So, I don't know. It was an interesting choice to make.
Now, do you have a favorite scene from this one? I don't want to steal yours.
Well, I do love, like, the scene I described. I love that when he's, because if you've read the story, like, he spends an extra half hour at his toilet, which means primping himself, like combing his hair back. And they show a little bit of that in the animation. But, he spent all this time, dressing himself up to go and try and woo Katrina Van Tassel at this, I don't know, it was like a quilting frolic or whatever the name of this thing, shindig he was going to. And just to see him on that horse, bobbing along, thinking he's like, he's about to be the conquering hero, right? Yeah. And he just looks like a goofball. And they nailed the description from the writing. So I just love that. Ichabod Crane bobbing along on that horse.
Oh, yeah.
Which was a borrowed horse. And actually, I do think they missed, and maybe they just didn't have the time to expound on this, but the horse is described in the writing before Ichabod gets described. And it's like an old, mean, one-eyed, like ornery beast of an animal, And they kind of paint the horse as like just kind of goofy and going along with it in the animation. So
right.
He's a rough sounding creature in the book. So it's kind of funny.
Well, I think for me, the favorite is the Brom Bones. At this point, he's been bested by Ichabod multiple times.
Yeah, and Brom Bones is like the Gaston but not a mean Gaston. I think he's just a boyish hunk of a man, right?
Yeah, he's used to running the town, and nobody challenges him.
Nope.
Right? He rules the roost. And so he's been bested multiple times. But he finally gets Ichabod when he starts singing about the Headless Horseman. Yeah. And like I said, it's a good song, and I couldn't remember the lyrics, so I do apologize for screwing that up. But it's like, here it is. So don't stop to figure out a plan. You can't reason with a headless man. But that song, just the look in Brom Bones' eye, his face, it's a little sinister, but he's not evil, but he's relishing giving Ichabod the spooks here.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting about that in the story, Ichabod kind of knows. Like, he knows his main competition for Katrina is Brom Bones. But he knows he can't go toe to toe with Brom Bones. Brom Bones is like a man's man, right? Mm-hmm. And so he has been wooing Katrina. Like, he goes and gives her extra voice lessons, and he's kind of on the sly. Like, I know he's my competition, so I'm gonna have to woo her kind of behind the scenes, know. And Brom Bones figures that out. He's like, I can't just go pummel this guy, right, and knock him out, because he's not confronting me in that way. So I've got to figure out another way to best him. And he finds his weakness in these scary stories that, he
kind of outsmarts Ichabod.
He outsmarts him. He outsmarts the school teacher, the pedagogue, they like to call him in the story. And I think they call him that in the animation, too.
Yeah, they do.
The pedagogue, yeah.
They do.
Which there's great, here's a shout out for both of these animated films.
Okay.
There's some great vocabulary that you are not likely to hear in a modern day animated anything. So you will actually learn some new vocabulary. High quality $5 words listening to these or watching these.
Let's get to the yay or nay portion of this. I think you can kind of figure it out from how we're talking. But is this a yay or nay for you, Kim?
Oh, it's definitely a yay. Both are a fun watch. Even if you're in a Halloween mood and you have to suffer through Mr. Toad, to get to Ichabod or vice versa. They're just fun. They're really fun. Very nostalgic, very charming.
Yeah, I agree. We watched it with our kids again recently. It's a fun watch.
Yeah. You know what? Ichabod, I think the appeal of Ichabod is the same appeal that those, what are they, ghost, like, what are the things you go to when you go to like St. Augustine or like Charleston?
Ghost walks.
Tours. Ghost tours. You go on these ghost walks or you ride a little carriage through town at night and some entertainer is telling you ghost stories. That's the draw of Ichabod Crane, right? It's just a harmless folklore type thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's a yay. All right, to continue our family-friendly spooky season session today, we are going to be covering the 1995 movie Casper. It is rated PG, and I don't know, where did we watch this?
We watched this, originally it was on Peacock. Right now it's on Netflix.
Oh, okay. So you have to go to Netflix if you want to see it. And I'll just say again, if you haven't seen this, we will talk spoilers. So you might want to go watch Casper somewhere and then come back and finish this episode. But yeah, so it came out in 1995. It was based on an older cartoon, right? I think from the 40s and 50s.
He was born in 1945.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, I'm just reading here that he was in 55 theatrical cartoons from 1945 to 1959. He had some comic books come out in the 50s. And then he's been in several cartoons basically since then.
Yeah, and then 1995 we decided to make a whole-length film about him, I guess.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Unfortunately, the Rotten Tomato critics didn't really care for it. They gave it a 51%, and the audience gave it a 49%.
Ooh.
So, yeah.
Pretty close, though.
Yeah.
Basically, 1 in 2 people like it.
Yeah, exactly. It's 50-50 chance you're going to like this.
Well, there's 2 people
movie.
here. We'll see what we think.
Okay.
All right. Well, let me tell you a little bit about it. Rich, spoiled Kerrigan, played by Kathy Moriarty, inherits from her father an old house that supposedly has a treasure hidden within it. However, it's haunted by 3 ghosts and their sweet little nephew, Casper. Kerrigan calls in Father Sarducci from Saturday Night Live. That was a fun cameo. Yeah. Ray, a ghostbuster.
Yes.
He even says, "Who are you going to call?" Somebody else. And he runs away. And then a wrecking crew. They're going to come just eliminate this building altogether.
Yeah.
And of course, they get chased away. And after all their attempts fail, they employ Dr. James Harvey, played by Bill Pullman, a paranormal therapist, to come in, live in the home, and encourage these ghosts to move on to the next phase of the afterlife.
Yes.
He brings his young daughter, Kat, played by Christina Ricci. They move into the home and quickly befriend Casper. Casper's uncles play several pranks on the family, but they come to like Harvey enough that they decide, hey, it's time to make this trio into a quartet.
Yeah.
They're going to off him. But then, he gives a nice little speech and, they come around. But he unfortunately dies in a drunken accident, just being stupid.
Yeah.
So I'm going to skim over some details, but Kerrigan kills herself in order to find the treasure, which is a pretty ill-advised plan, and eventually she moves on to the afterlife. Casper is able to bring Harvey back to life. This kind act leads to Casper getting a night of being a living boy again. He attends a Halloween party at the Harvey's house and dances with Kat, kissing her before reverting back to a ghost.
Yes, it's kind of Cinderella-esque, right?
It is. Yep. Yeah. So my history with this film is, I remember it being on. You got to remember in 1995, at this point, I'm in high school and a Casper movie wasn't singing to me.
Or I don't know when in 1990. You could have been graduated from high school.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I don't remember what month this came out. I graduated in, June of 1995.
Right.
So this movie really wasn't on my radar.
Right.
And I watched it for this, basically.
Yeah.
So my history is like, I've seen this once, and I just saw it for this.
Yes, and you kind of saw it at my recommendation. We had a Friday night, a couple of our kids were home, and we were like, hey, let's watch something. And I do have some recollection of this movie because I have a younger sister. So in 95, I was still in the middle of high school and probably wasn't too interested because the students, the children, if you will, in this movie are really more adolescent, preteens. So this wouldn't have been on my radar either, but my sister was very much in that age bracket. And so I watched it with her and she loved it. And I think we watched it probably multiple times at home. So I had some recollection of it. And then I saw what we will call, and what I've heard the interwebs call, an elder millennial speak to this movie recently online.
Oh, okay.
Basically, like, they were so excited to show it to their kids. This person's a bit younger than I am, probably close to my sister's age.
Okay.
Because, like, it was part of their Halloween Halloween's growing up. They loved Casper. They wanted to be Christina Ricci. They wanted Casper to turn into the real boy and be their love interest too.
Really? Okay.
So they were super excited to show this movie to their kids. Now, they didn't go into all of that. It was just like, oh, I love this movie as a kid. I can't wait to show it to my kids. And I thought, it must be a pretty family-friendly watch. What I remember of it, I watched it with my sister when she was about that age. So that's why we decided to throw it into our family-friendly spooky season watch.
And it definitely was family friendly.
Sure, absolutely.
Nothing bad. Why don't we just roll into our standouts? So I'm going to start us off. I'm going to give a standout to both Christina Ricci and Bill Pullman for great acting performances. Christina doesn't seem like a kid actor. She's a pro already. I don't know the timeline. I think this is after The Addams Family.
I can't remember, honestly.
But probably, just based on, I'm thinking of Wednesday Addams, seems younger than
Potentially,
her.
Yeah.
But she seems like a pro already at this point. Mm-hmm. And Pullman, really nice depth in this movie. He's grieving the loss of his wife. Mm-hmm. He's hoping to find her in the afterlife. The uncles do a little prank on him.
Oh, the uncles are terrible. It
was pretty terrible. But, he seems to have good comedic timing with these three uncles.
Yeah.
Especially as they get closer and closer. Lots of physical comedy. There's a lot of pranks going on.
Right.
And they're
with
just
fictitious. This is, I'm assuming, green screen or something.
Yeah.
So I think they did a good job of acting with what had to have been nothing.
Right. Yeah. So again, good depth. He's really serious. You can tell he's a wounded man based on losing his daughter's mom or his mom. Or,
his wife.
His wife. I don't know what I'm trying to say.
Relationships
are hard. He's trying to encourage his daughter to go to school.
Right.
And kind of start anew, under these weird circumstances because a paranormal therapist.
Yeah, that's
what
not
the
a
heck
normal
is that?
job. Not a normal job. And they've moved into like the creepiest house in town, right?
Yeah.
So all of the school kids that are her age know the house that they're living in as like the one you dare somebody to go up and knock on the door,
right?
Or do something because they all know it's haunted kind of thing. So not only is she the new kid, she's now the new weird kid.
So yeah, my hat's off to both Christina and Bill for this one.
Yeah, I agree. I will say, I can't say really my hat's off to her because, she's so annoying. But Kathy Moriarty does a really good job of painting herself as a villain here. Yeah. The uncles, the three uncle ghosts, they're awful. They're disgusting. They're super annoying. But, they're not as detestable as Kathy Moriarty is.
Right.
She's just greedy and awful. Yeah. So she pulled that off well.
Yes. Also, the animation, I do think it was a great call to use that cartoony animation. Mm-hmm. So Casper isn't some sort of realistic looking ghost. He looks more like the original cartoon.
Yeah, it's cute. He's cute.
He's very cute, yeah. And so they make that decision, and I think it makes the CGI work, even though it's 2023 and this film's from 1995.
Yeah, exactly. I would agree with that. It doesn't look like, oh man, this is terribly dated. Like, it just looks like cartoon Ghost.
Yeah.
And I think that was a smart choice.
Good choice. And yeah, I did like it. I did have questions. How come they look the way they do? And then at the end of the movie, when Bill Pullman's wife shows up, she doesn't look like a big cartoon. Well,
that's true, but she's not really a ghost. Like, she had passed on, right? I think that was part of the story arc, is she's not trapped somewhere as a ghost, which that's part of Bill Pullman's arc, right? Is like he's trying to find her. He travels all around to counsel these other ghosts, hoping he's going to run into his dead wife somewhere. Mm-hmm. But she was fully loved in real life, so she didn't have a reason. I'm getting into ghost lore here that I don't really believe in, but whatever. It's for the movie. So she has passed on. So I think we see her in her, I don't know, just whatever, post-death. I would say almost angelic state, but I don't know how far the lore extends here.
Right.
But yeah, so whereas the ghosts that are trapped, they have this cartoon ghost look. Yeah. But I will say Bill Pullman's ghost, because he accidentally dies. Yeah. And his ghost it is a cartoon version of Bill Pullman.
Right.
Where the other ghosts are just ghost caricatures.
Yeah.
Like Casper himself is like a little white blob. He's kind of cute, like kind of squishy little white. He doesn't look like the boy that he becomes when he gets his one night of, teen dance.
Well, same thing with Kathy Moriarty when she dies.
Yeah, she looks like cartoon Kathy. She has Kathy Moriarty's features, just like Bill Pullman does. So I did question that too. I guess we could throw that into the setbacks, right?
Right.
Like what? It's just, I have questions.
Yeah.
Why does Casper just look like a glob of marshmallow fluff?
Yeah.
And these other people that become ghosts look like the ghost version of themselves.
Yes.
So, setbacks here. I've already mentioned Kathy Moriarty. I've given her a standout as far as like she's easy to dislike as a bad guy. But it really doesn't deserve a standout as much as like, if your goal was to be hated, you did a good job of that, right? Really, I feel like she's more of a setback in the movie because we don't really need her. Like that whole storyline of like she needs these people to live in this house so that she can get her hands on this treasure. Like we just didn't need it. And she's really dislikable. Like, she's unnecessary and you don't want to, there's no redeeming qualities about her at all.
Right.
You already have villains and these crazy zany uncles. You already have a reason for them to be traveling around living in old houses. There's Kat has a rival at school that becomes an issue. So there's another sort of bad guy thrown in there. Yeah. It's just like, how many bad guys do we need in one movie, Yeah. And then, the whole thing about Kathy Moriarty's character, Kerrigan, I think is her name, right? She really, really wants this treasure that's in the house. Well, it's not even really a treasure. It's a signed baseball, Yeah. Like, so it's just like, did we really need that whole storyline? She was not nearly as likable a bad guy as the three fake ghosts.
Yeah. Yeah, they could have done pretty much the standard haunted house story, which is you have, a house that you inherit, like a crazy uncle or whatever, right? It's a family member. You inherit this thing and you show up and now you got these ghosts to contend with.
Well, we already know this is his profession. Like he's traveling the country. She's going from school to school because her dad is like counseling ghosts in haunted places. So we didn't need Kerrigan to draw him to this house.
Right.
Like, that's just part of his job. We already knew that.
That's true. That's true. And, you'd mentioned how she gets herself killed where, she's trying to get this treasure that's not really a treasure. And my main setback has to do with that as well. It's that the third act doesn't really stick its landing.
Oh, so true.
So you look at like the storyline we had with Kat's rival, I think Amber's her name, and the good-looking boy that she's interested in, and they're planning to kind of do like a Carrie type story, from Stephen King's Carrie,
right,
where they're going to embarrass her in front of her whole school at this party, right? Like make her think that this boy's really crazy about her, and that she's going to go to this dance. And
it's the Mean Girl setup.
It's a Mean Girl setup. Yeah, they're going to do something to really humiliate her. And they spend enough time on it, teasing it throughout the movie. You think, oh, this is going to be something pretty big. Like a big showdown's going to happen.
And maybe Casper's going to save the day.
Yeah.
We don't know.
But it just stops. It's like the three uncles just stop them, right? Yeah. It just stops dead in its tracks. Who's going to be the person that gets to come to life? That whole contraption kind of came out of nowhere too.
That's true, yeah.
We get one person that we can go from being a ghost to being a real, live person again. So they didn't really tease that very well throughout the whole.
No,
first
it
and second
really
act.
came late in the movie, right? That whole and by the way, we have this whole contraption in the basement and this special serum that can bring a dead person back to life.
Yeah.
And now we've got 3 or 4 people in the mix that might need this, or 3, I guess, right? Kerrigan, Bill Pullman's character, and Casper.
Yes.
It was really late in the game to kind of pull that all off.
Yeah. And again, just late in the game, I don't know what other people were seeing, but I was seeing a friendship story develop between Kat and Casper.
Sure.
And I get it that Casper was really lonely. He wanted a friend so badly. And here's this pretty little girl that happens to be about the same age as him when he died.
Right.
But I guess for me, it was a little weird when he turns into this really good-looking preteen.
Yes.
Right? And then everyone's like, oh wow, look at him, and they're dancing, and then they kiss. Like it became, well, this is a romance now.
Right. I think it weirded out our 15-and-a-half-year-old too. She was like, wait, these seemed like children, and now they're like smooching at a school dance. Like, what's happening here?
Yeah.
But I do think that's the reason why this story has a fond spot in the corner of these elder millennial hearts, is because they were probably 10, 11 years old seeing this.
Yeah.
And thinking, oh, this boy's so cute. Because the young man who plays real Casper when he gets to come alive for one night is a very handsome little boy.
Yeah, he is.
Which is a really creepy thing to come out of my mouth.
I know, but it's true though. Like, but they emphasize that in the story.
Right.
Like he's catching everybody's eye.
Yeah,
like, who's
all
this
the
kid?
other kids at this party, I don't know, a bunch of 5th, 6th graders, whatever they are, they're all like, whoa, where'd he come from? You know? But it's weird. It's weird. And I think part of what makes it super weird is because the whole time Casper's been this little blob of marshmallow, cute ghost. Mm-hmm. Like, think about it. He kind of looks like a baby. He doesn't have hair.
Yeah.
So you're not thinking of him as like a potential early tweens love interest.
Right.
He seems like a baby.
Yeah.
He's intelligent and he's kind, not babyish.
Right.
But his looks, that he's like
he feels 7 or 8.
Yeah.
He doesn't feel 13
He seems like what are those toys that everybody has now? Squishimals or Squishmallows?
You got me.
Like those little soft, squishy, whatever they are toys. That's what he looks like. He doesn't look like somebody's heartthrob idea.
Yeah. I just think like the first and second act were really, really good. Great setups. Mm-hmm. A lot of real drama, and we'll get to some favorite scenes here in a minute, but some really good stuff. And then that third act, it just goes a little bonkers to me. It goes off the rails a little bit. Like they're throwing a lot of new ideas at you. New things are coming down. And just needless things are happening. And just, I don't know. It didn't necessarily stay true to the first and second act for me.
I agree.
All right. So what is your favorite scene in this film?
I can't say that I particularly have a favorite scene. There's nothing that really like stands out to me except for we'll say the setting. And really when I say the setting, I mean particularly this old house. Uh-huh. I don't know if it was just a set piece in a studio. I could have done some more research on that, I guess, or if they used an actual house, but it was pretty cool. And I think that's part of what makes these movies likable by kids, mm-hmm. is because you like to imagine yourself living in, or even just being able to explore these cool buildings with hidden doors and big mm-hmm. giant staircases and chandeliers and some history to them. Like,
right.
That's like a lot of children's literature is kind of written about, wardrobes that lead to other worlds, that sort of thing. So, shout out to C.S. Lewis. But, so I think that definitely that's a trope that everybody likes in a movie is, that's how we get all these haunted mansion movies and different tales like that. It's like the house itself is its own character. So I don't have a scene, but I did enjoy experiencing this house and its funky staircases and all that.
Okay. No, that makes sense. Well, so I have two scenes that are contenders, and I'll cheat and go with both of them. And they both involve the three uncles with Bill Pullman. So the first one is when the three uncles go with Bill to a bar. Bill's getting drunk, and the four of them are connecting. And like I mentioned before, they've decided they've been a trio long enough. It's time they became a quartet. And they have all these little funny sequences where when his back is turned, they're breaking out guns and these big blunt instruments, and they're ready to knock him out. Yeah. And as soon as he turns around, they hide their stuff again. And he gets all sentimental on him. He praises them. He kisses them all on the head for being good guys. Promises to tell Kerrigan that the house is theirs. She doesn't have a right to take it from them. Mm-hmm. And they are just completely converted at that point from being bad guys to being good guys.
Yeah, they do rally.
And they know they can't, move forward with their sinister plan. But obviously then Bill Pullman, he's walking backwards and then walks off the side of the building. And
the bar's like on a cliff or something. I don't know. It doesn't make sense.
So that was a pretty funny scene. I like their interactions. And So this next one's not so much my favorite, but definitely the most memorable. When I think of this movie, I think of this scene, and it's the scene where Dr. Harvey is really, played by Bill Pullman, they know that he wants to see his dead wife.
Yeah.
And they start playing with his emotions, and they're like, oh, she's great, by the way.
Yeah,
like,
we know her.
We know her. She's fantastic. He's like, what? You know her? And they've got him at this point.
Yeah. This is before their transformation into allies of his.
Yeah. This is early on.
Yeah.
And they just screw with him. And they convince him that, that they're going to go get her.
And they convince him that they're doing him a favor. Like, this is really kind of shady. Like, we're bending the rules, but we'll do it for you.
Right.
Yeah.
And then, of course, they go to the other room. There's all this smoke and fog, and he calls out to his dead wife, and it's one of the ghosts in a dress, and he goes and just kisses Bill Pullman right on the lips.
It's not any one of the ghosts. It's the one that they call Fatso, who's in like a Jessica Rabbit type dress.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's grotesque. Like, he's barely in that dress.
It's really, really cruel, but
it's a mean joke.
It's a very mean prank, but it is very memorable. And I think this is one of those scenes where really, like, Bill Pullman gets to use his acting chops, right?
That's true. You
see a wide variety of emotions in this 3-minute scene.
That's true. And he's acting with himself, basically. Because these are, I'm assuming CGI things they've slapped on later.
Yeah. All right, for Casper, we've done our standouts, our setbacks, our favorite scene. I think it's time.
Is it?
We do the yay or nay. What say you, Kim?
I think this one gets a meh for me. I was excited to see it because I was duped by someone else's nostalgia, and I thought, yeah, I remember Casper. Let's watch that. And it was fine. Like, it wasn't a wasted night or anything like that. But we could have watched something else, and it would have been just as fine.
Right.
It's a meh for me.
It's a meh. Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I'll say go ahead and watch it if you got nothing else to watch, right?
Sure.
Like, it's a good family appropriate kids film. If they're really young, they'll probably like the animation. They'll like the hijinks, the silliness.
Yeah, young boys will definitely enjoy the nasty uncle ghost.
Yeah.
They're just gross.
Yeah. So all that's good. I think, like I said, the third act really didn't stick its ending, so that bothered me. So if you're looking for great cinema, this isn't it. But I tend to say, I tend to like most things. I think it's worth a watch. But if there are other options, there's definitely better ones out there.
Yeah.
It's definitely not one of those Halloween classics. It's not one I'm going to put on every Halloween. Okay, just a couple posts on our Instagram this week regarding Ichabod and Mr. Toad. We have our friend Chris Sadodada said, watched it this weekend. It ain't spooky season for me without it.
Oh, yay.
And then as far as Casper, Any Mango Cosplay, our friend Nathan, he said, I watched this for the first time when my family went camping at Fort Wilderness. They played it on a big outdoor screen and gave us popcorn. I will always have good memories of this movie. It's funny with a little creepy mixed in.
Okay, yeah. If I'm camping at Disney with popcorn at the pool.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's not too bad.
Yeah, and we've talked about this several times. I think it always depends what is the context in which you've seen this film.
Right, exactly.
So I first saw this as a 46-year-old man.
Yeah, it's not really,
I wasn't the target audience.
You were not the target audience. Yeah, if you have an adolescent or pre-tween? Is that right? Pre-teens. I guess pre-tweens are adolescents. Anyhow, if you got kids that are younger than 15, they may enjoy this.
Yes. Today is a special day for us. Did you know that?
No. Why is it a special day?
Because we are recording our 50th episode.
Oh, this is our 50th episode.
Yes. That's kind of a milestone.
Yeah. Where's the reggae horn?
So in celebration, just to do something different, why don't we do it for this next episode?
Okay.
Where we take questions from our fans, our friends, and we just do a short little informal, kind of fun question-answer time.
Q&A?
Q&A.
From the audience?
Yeah, you want to do that?
So this is some people call it a what? An AMA? An Ask Me Anything?
Oh, okay.
We reserve the right to not answer.
Yeah.
But, we'll do our best.
Yeah. So why don't we do that? Well, that's a little tease for next time.
Yeah.
And then,
so how do people send us questions?
So all that stuff I mentioned earlier, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, at Attack of the 20th Century. And then, of course, we have email, attackofthe20thcentury@outlook.com. I'll also post something on Insta where you can pop in questions in
cool.
And what do they call it? It's just questions, right?
A question box?
Question box.
I think that's what it's called.
So yeah, we'll do something fun like that. And in that episode, we'll announce what our next movie is. How about that?
Okay, that sounds great.
All righty, everybody, have a good one.
Enjoy your movies, guys. Peace out.
Peace out.